Last week we defined Bhakti, which I think is important because it's a term used as a self-descriptor by our tradition. Hinduism, for example, is a Persian term that was used originally to designate people that were being traded with. So people from the Middle East were coming to India to sell their wares. And they had to cross the Sindh River, which is in modern-day Pakistan. And they called the people on the other side of the Sindh River Hindus, because the sibilant sa got pronounced as ha, the Middle Eastern accent, and so they became Hindus. So the word Hindu is a foreigner's term that's used to describe really a geographical area. It's not ultimately a religious term. It's not even a foreigner's religious term about India. And then Western Indology wanted to come up with a single word to describe the indigenous faiths of ancient India, and they picked the word Hinduism. But even in our own medieval texts, you only find the word Hindu used when we're trying to differentiate ourselves from the Muslims. But in terms of an internal descriptor, a term that we use amongst ourselves, you don't find the word Hindu occurs. You do find the word Vaishnav occurs, and importantly, you find the word Bhakti occurs. And so it's important to know the terms of your tradition that were picked by your framers, by your theologians, to describe what it is we're doing. Does that make sense? It's important. I mean, think about it. You've got a language which is developed. Get your hand out of your bead bag. We got a language which is developed. And stop crossing your arms like that. It just looks weird. Thank you. You're doing classical art like this. You're like, what are you trying to tell me? Like you're completely closed off? You get a group of people together, and they decide we're going to do something together that's going to make us who we are, and we've got something in common, and that thing we have in common, we're going to call it this. And that's so that your knowledge of that term, like aloha mahalo, if you're from Hawaii, they're important concepts. You know, or even like the idea of like rasa, if you're Mexican. You know the word rasa? You know the term, right? It's an important term. I mean, you're too young maybe, you don't know. It was an important term for your parents. Who's older and Mexican here? I'm looking around. There's somebody in their 30s or something. Oh, there you are. You know the term rasa? Of course you do, right? How important is that term to your people? Yeah. La raza, right? It's a big deal. Now he's shaking his head now, because I just outed you. Huh? Oh, you're not Mexican. Where are you from? He's from Salvador, El Salvador, but it's the same. I mean, you should know it. You should have some idea. Michelle, who can tell me? Anyway, you know. I'm going to go with you. You got it. Or Chicano. That's another important word. Pachuco. That's another important word. These are important words which were used as self-descriptors by Mexican people to identify themselves. Every culture is going to have words which are are pregnant with meaning for their people. In fact, you can't really be a member of that tribe without having a really sophisticated, deep, and profound working knowledge of those terms, because those terms encode so much of the ethic and the value system of those people. Do you guys follow that? So, and this idea that you sever a teaching from its culture is just preposterous. It's this Western idea, this postmodern subjectivist idea, reductionism idea. It's very, very in vogue in Western academic circles. At least it was a couple of decades ago. It's funny, I was just talking to a scholar of Sanskrit yesterday or the day before, and he's, a very, very well-published author, published by Princeton University Press and Columbia Press and Yale Press and Oxford Press. He's a high-level author, pretty much at the top of his field, which is Hinduism, Vaishnavism, and Sanskrit. And he was saying, it's a deficiency for me because I'm not Indian. He says, someone who's born in India, who's from Indian parents, that scholar has a leg up on me within academic circles. And I was laughing. I said, yeah, that's in the last 10 years. He goes, yeah, it's in the last 10 years. I said, because prior to that, if you were Indian, you were considered to be biased, and you were not capable of objective scholarship, and you were a lower level scholar. And everyone wanted the scholars to have white skin and have this postmodern subjectivist worldview where they were able to sever the teaching from its culture and describe it in extremely neutral and sometimes almost condescending neutral Western terminology, where everything Hinduism was created as a monolithic indigenous spirituality of India, although there are hundreds of different faiths in India and maybe 3 or 4 major ones, but they all had to be housed under one title because that's how Christianity was studied. So they took that Western model, that Eurocentric model, and they forced it onto Hinduism. They forced it onto the Indic religious tradition, even though it was a square peg being forced into a round hole. All things Western were considered to be the standard. And the more you were able to look at other traditions through a Western Eurocentric lens, then the better your scholarship was. Do you follow that? That was the case when I was growing up until about 10 years ago, when all of a sudden it became way more cool to be an indigenous scholar. And then once BLM hit, that became 4 times more important. 4 times more important. It was huge. It was a huge cultural shift that took place within our own experience just a few years ago. Do you guys remember it? And now there's enough distance from it, even just in a couple of years, where you can look at how it's fundamentally changed the landscape. So yeah, anytime you have a teaching, it was taught in a language to a group of people at a specific time somewhere. And the mere fact that it was taught in a language means it is inexorably tied to a given culture. Because that culture, that language of that culture, the words they choose to describe things, how they understand those words. We were also talking about, for instance, we have one word, love, in English. And you talk about how you love your meal, and you also talk about how you love God. But in other languages, You might have 2-3 dozen words for love. Like in Sanskrit, you have asakti, which means attachment, which is also used as a synonym for love, an attached form of love. Or you have prema, which is a more generic term for love. Or you have kam, which is also love, but it's a desirous type of love. Or you have pranaya, which is an intimate type of love. Or you have sneha, which is a certain kind of affection. Priti, which is a certain dearness you feel to somebody. And ishta, which again communicates desire for that person. These are all terms which are used for love, and so if you really were to render them into English, you almost would have to use the word love and then pick an adjective, because in Sanskrit there's a nuance where when you mention one of these terms, for instance, asakti, it indicates that you're very attached to the person. Now, love communicates attachment also. There's pair bonding and social bonding, where it's actually an amazing phenomenon, but especially in romantic relationships, but also in platonic relationships, you bond with people and your brain chemistry gets linked up to their presence. And when you are close to them, you get a dopamine hit. And you feel euphoric and happy. Are you familiar with this? It's amazing what happens in bonding within animals as well as within human beings. You have people, just think about it. You don't even need me to give you the neurology of it and the chemicals of it, the chemical component. You can just think about it. If you have certain people in your life and you want to talk to them every day, and when you talk to them you feel happy, and if you don't talk to them you have anxiety, right? That exists in the animal community. It happens really young. There's something called attachment theory, which is very much the standard nowadays within developmental psychology for how human beings and also other animals live. And it's especially important for humans because, a cow can be born and just falls out of its mother's womb and then starts walking around, and maybe it suckles for a few months, but then it starts eating hay and it's good to go. Human beings aren't like that. For years without your parents, you die. We can't even roll over for 6 months. We can't even walk for a year. We can't communicate with others for a couple of years. We're utterly dependent on our parents for years. For years. So that human beings with their massively powerful brains have an incredible ability to develop attachment for one another, and you see it happening very, very quickly within children. Children get jealous just a few months old, where they'll act aggressively and manifest anxiety and anger if their mother plays with a doll that looks like a child. They do studies like this. They seem a little bit cruel, but whatever. It used to be a lot more cruel, what you get away with in the 60s. Nowadays, you have to be very careful what you do to small children, but they're able to test like this and see this kind of stuff. Children will begin mimicking the accent of their mother at 3 weeks old. And a child has separation anxiety. It's very easy to see where if the mother's present, the child feels good. If the mother's not present, the child becomes anxious and disturbed. And it's just the mere presence of the mother or the father, whoever the attachment figure is enough to calm the child. And because Anandini went back to work, then Narayan in some ways became the attachment figure for a moment in Kairava's life. I think it's probably equalized now, but there was a minute there where Anandini, if she couldn't handle Kairava, despite the fact that she's lactating, I mean, you figure that gives you a pretty big handicap. You're pretty advantaged. Not a handicap, but you're handicapped. She's advantaged. I mean, what a leg up, right? You lactate. Your kid is used to drinking milk from your breasts, and they can smell it on you. And you have automatic pillows, for your child attached to your body at all times, and a hip, which is like a little nook for them to fit into. And then you make their dinner. Their dinner, you make it. And they can smell it on you. That's a pretty big advantage. But how can a father compete with that? But yet you did. She would go to you. A nunny would not be able to handle her, and she'd handle you, and you'd be able to pacify her. It's crazy, right? Because he was there. It's attachment theory in practice. You see it. Even despite the natural advantages she has, the biological advantages she has over you, because you were there. She had to go to work, and you were in between jobs at that moment. You could spend a lot of time with the kid. It happened. So anyway, I don't know how I got into attachment theory. I was talking about language and things being locked into a culture. How did I get into attachment theory? Love. I got into love. Ah, thank you. Language, love, thank you. Wow, appreciate that part. Thank you. So, you've got words in a language and they have different meanings. And so asakti communicates this attached love. It can be used in a negative sense, actually. We should be anasakta, we should be unattached. But it's also used in a positive sense within our poetry to describe your attachment for God. And then if you render it as love, you'd miss the nuance. And if you render it as attachment, you'd also miss the nuance. So what you really have to do to render that word in English, you have to say attached love. But and now you got two words in English, but there's a single word in Sanskrit which communicates that. And whenever you start to get 2, 3 words, a paragraph, a sentence, you're going to lose something in translation. And when you get people who have a single word which communicates that, it becomes this this thing you share. Like the mafia likes to refer themselves as Cosa Nostra. Our thing, right? Nuestra familia. Our family, right? They're using the mafia language. Did you figure that one out? Yeah, you figured that one out. You got 2 major groups of prison gangs in California, and really now across the country. You've got Laeme, which is the southern recension of the gang. And then you have Nuestra Familia, which is a northern recension of the gang. Norteños, Nuestra Familia versus Laeme versus the Mexican Mafia. And these two, Fresno's, Bakersfield kind of is the line of demarcation between those two groups. And if you're from a Mexican gang in California and you have an arch rival, like a huge rival gang, like 18th Street and B13, I think is a traditional rivalry. I don't know if they're still fighting, but they used to fight pretty big time. Is it still fighting? Yeah, 18 fights because they're so big, they fight everybody. So anyway, you get 2 gangs, and they are mortal enemies. They kill each other on the streets. But then the moment they step into prison, their hatred of one another goes away, and they become the same gang. And so anyway, one of those gangs, the Northern California gang, actually it's interesting, it's racism. There's a whole thing. Chicanos, people who are of Mexican origin but were born in the U.S., have their own identity that's distinct from people who are born just a few hundred miles away across the border in Mexico. And so Chicano culture is a culture of people who have pride in their ethnic background, but they don't identify with people from across the border who are from their motherland. You follow this? So the group I ran with as a kid, the Mexican gang, it was illegal. It was not allowed if you were born in Mexico to join the gang. You could only join the gang if you were born in the U.S. and you were Mexican. That was a standard. Anyway, then numbers dwindled, and they had to start taking in people from out of the country, and now the same gang is accepting people from El Salvador or from wherever they can get it from because they're trying to keep themselves alive and keep their numbers up and not get gentrified out of their territory. But anyway, there was a lot of workers that came over from Mexico and lived, especially in central and northern California, and did farming. And they were, they worked on, almond farms, for example, or wherever, whatever they were growing, up in central and northern California. There's a lot of farmland up there. We don't really experience this down here. It's just urban sprawl as far as you can look, but up there it was farmland. And so they had Mexican people who came over, they got involved in crime, but they had this sort of farmer culture. And they were considered to be low class by the Chicanos born in the U.S. who were from the cities. And in prison they were treated poorly. And at one point, one guy from the southern side stole the shoes of a guy from the northern side in San Quentin in the 60s, and that gave birth to these two gangs. And so Nuestra Familia, our family, was a gang of Mexican people who were usually, a lot of times born in Mexico, who worked on farms and who were looked down upon by the Chicanos that were, largely their brothers. And it's one of the biggest rivalries and bloodiest rivalries in the history of gangs that occurred 50 years ago. And that's the background of it. Right? And if you go to prison in California, and even honestly, like in this, kind of western U.S. states, you have to join, and you're Mexican, you got to join one of these gangs. It's pretty clear which one you're a part of. There's a few exceptions. There's that gang out of Fresno, what are they called? The Bulldogs out of Fresno, they refused to join. And I think there's a couple of guys in L.A. too, I can't remember.
They were, but now they joined. They were
what was that gang called? Maravilla, yeah. So Maravilla, when I was growing up, they hadn't joined.
Yeah. Even when I went in, they were part. This is recently.
Just recently, right? 10 years. Yeah. Okay. back to Earth. But Nuestra Familia, our family. Cosa Nostra, our thing. That's how the mafia refer themselves. They don't call themselves mafia. They call themselves Cosa Nostra, which is Italian for our thing. It's the same as Mexican. Nuestra Cosa Nostra, communicates the same thing. And so it's our thing. But if you have to translate that into English, you lose it. If you translate mahalo and aloha into English, you lose it. Or like there's a Japanese term os, which is very, very popular to say in martial arts studio. It's been adopted by the jiu-jitsu community. And so os is like that term os, when you say it to somebody who's also a martial arts practitioner, and specifically a practitioner of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it communicates just huge amounts about the tradition that you share with these people. And if you're outside of it, you don't get it. It's like there's a movie called Donnie Brasco. And the protagonist, there's a whole thing they do with forget about it. It's like, hey, what's that mean? The FBI are asking their agent, what does forget about it mean? And he's been in deep undercover. And he's like, oh, forget about it. It depends on how you say it. And he goes through like 8-10 different ways. Forget about it can be used to mean like it's okay, or I got your back, or get away from me, or it could be used to mean, but if you're outside that culture, then you don't know. So bhakti is that. Interestingly enough, bhakti becomes prapatti, or sharanagati in South India. The way bhakti is used in North India is not the way bhakti is used in South India. The Ramanujis, they specifically critique the term bhakti as being something like what we would call karma mishra bhakti or karma yoga. They critique bhakti as being about ritualism and what you do for God as opposed to your feeling in your heart. And so they prefer to use the term prapatti, prapana, sharanagati to describe their path. Right? Yeah. So he's got South Indian tilak on, Ramanuji tilak on, so I'm assuming he knows this. So It's critical that we learn the terminology that's used by our tradition to define itself, and our tradition has chosen the term bhakti. Now, if you're talking to someone from South India, you'd have to say to them, no, we mean Sharanagati. That's what we mean. When we say bhakti, we mean Sharanagati. We mean prapanna. We mean prapati. And they go, oh, really? Because we don't use the word like that. And you go, yeah, that's how we use it. And then they say, are you sure? And you go, yeah. And then you give them the definition of bhakti. Here's our definition of bhakti. And then they say, oh, yes, we call that this. And then even if you're translating from one language to another, they both have that idea. So even though they call it different words, you can figure it out, and you can make that connection with them. So interestingly, about 1,000 years ago, some Vaishnava theologians in South India, one in particular, wrote a book called Stotra Ratna, the Jewel of Prayers. And in that text, he defined Sharanagati, which means the path of surrender. Sharanagati, the path of surrender. And so, and he defined it. And he defined it systematically, theologically, in a way that really communicated to generations of followers exactly what he was talking about. And our tradition in North India, which was made up of South Indian Vaishnavas ultimately, they liked this term so much that 500 years later they took it. And they used it in our medieval text as our core definition of bhakti. They also wrote their own definitions, which we might do on a different day. But today I thought we would go over it briefly, and it's going to get thick now, so you guys have to pay attention. And really, ideally, you're going to memorize what I'm saying. And if you can understand these terms and memorize them and deeply imbibe them and understand their nuance, you'll now have a working knowledge of what we mean when we say bhakti. And this definition is well over 1,000 years old. It was penned in South India, and it traveled, well over thousands of miles by land over centuries before the advent of the printing press, passed on from generation to generation through oral reception, where people heard and memorized it. And it was then adopted by our tradition because the definition was so perfect, it was so well done, that they decided, okay, this is our thing. And if you really are a pundit, not only do you know what the definition means, but you know where it came from and how it evolved and how it was used and how it traveled. That's really the mark of a pundit. Not only do you know the information, but you know the history. And not necessarily a Western academic version of history, but the internal version of history of that tradition. Which is usually, anyway, the jumping off point for Western scholarship. They have to go to traditional pundits to begin their study of a subject. And then they branch off and use different things like different hermeneutical tools and different dating devices and different concepts of historical linguistics. And they start to overlay those. But they always start by talking to traditional pundits and learning what they know because they're the holders of any tradition. That's why ultimately scholars have to go and live in that place and spend some time. So, Sharanagati. Savidha Sharanagati. These are the 6 aspects of surrender. So there's 6 of them. 6 aspects of surrender. So there's 6 things you got to memorize, and then you'll know what the word Sharanagati meant for the South Indians, and this is the term we use to define bhakti. And we switched the word to bhakti. We called it Uttam Bhakti, first class bhakti. We separated from Karma Mishra Bhakti, bhakti mixed with a desire for enjoyment. Jnana Mishra Bhakti, bhakti mixed with a desire for knowledge. We distinguished it from that. And we called it Uttam Bhakti, or topmost Bhakti, pure Bhakti, Shuddha Bhakti, pure Bhakti. Prem Bhakti, the Bhakti of love. We have different terms we use for it. And so, but we're just going to focus on this sixfold definition. Savidha Sharanagati. The 6 types of surrender. So what are they? What are the 6 types? You ready? Here we go. Anukulyasya Sankalpa. Anukulyasya Sankalpa. Sankalpa means, in this context, acceptance. Of anukul. Anukulyasya means acceptance of what is anukul. Anukul means favorable. You accept whatever is favorable for your relationship with Krishna. Do you always know what's favorable for your relationship with Krishna? You don't. Do you oftentimes know what's favorable for your relationship with Krishna? Yes, you do. Is your problem in life that you don't know what's favorable for Krishna? What's your primary problem? A, I don't know what's favorable for my relationship with Krishna. Or B, I know it's favorable, but I don't want to do it. You follow? So if you have understood that you should accept whatever's favorable, 75% of your problems are gone. Because you have a behavioral and a cognitive, really. The primary meaning would be behavioral, in terms of your behavior. But you could add in a cognitive component. You could accept mindsets which are favorable for your relationship with Krishna. You could let go, for example, of resentment on the basis that Krishna doesn't want for me to be resentful. I have to let go of it. A lot of times we think we're a victim of our mental states, but we have an incredible amount of power to control our mental states and to choose our mental states. But we don't have to call it a cognitive one, because we have cognitive elements of this definition. We can just call it behavioral. Anukulyasya sankalpa. You accept a lifestyle which brings you closer to Krishna. If you just embrace that idea, 3/4 of your problems are gone. The majority of problems of young devotees is their lack of ability to do what they know should be done. Somebody told you what should be done, they made a cogent argument, it made sense, it resonated, but the spirit is strong, but flesh is weak. It's actually not true. Your spirit actually isn't strong. If your spirit's strong, your flesh falls into line. If you decide, I have to do this, I don't care what happens, I'm going to do this. If you adopt that kind of mindset, you can work miracles with your body. You can white knuckle stuff if you need to. You can fight through stuff. You can go through withdrawals. You can do the needful. I was just listening to a lecture today. Do you know what the primary correlate to pornography addiction is? It's not related to sex addiction or sex desire. The primary correlate that they find is present in almost all cases where someone suffers from pornography addiction. You know what it is? The primary thing that's in their life? A lack of meaning. A lack of purpose. Because if you have a reason to avoid the behavior, to go through the withdrawals, to do the right thing, to break free from the addiction, then you can do it. But if you got no reason to, it's just you're doing nothing, then it becomes a stimuli. It's just so easy. It's just a stimuli. It's just right there. And so people end up going for it. And they get addicted. If they can't get their act again, they get something to live for and something to give up their nonsense for, they won't do it. Far out, right? I was surprised when the doctor was pointing this out. That the studies indicated it's not actually necessarily correlated to sex, or a dangerous sexual behavior. It's just people don't have anything going on in life, and they're hopeless, and they have a lack of purpose in their life, And so amazingly, like with most addictive behavior, if you give people a big enough yes, they can do the right thing. We got to find that yes. And that's really true across the board. I want to love Krishna. I'm going to accept whatever's favorable for that. That mindset, what's his name, died in a helicopter crash, not as good as Michael Jordan, but a really good basketball. What was his name? Kobe Bryant, yeah, thank you. Kobe Bryant had this thing he called the Black Mamba mentality, right? What I thought was kind of a dumb way to frame it, but I mean, he's an incredible athlete, so he can pick his term. But I think the black was a nod to that he was black, so cool, that's fair enough. And Mamba, I'm not really into snakes, so it's pretty much if you identify yourself with a snake, snakes in India are considered to be super low class and inauspicious because they bite children and kill them, so no one wants to liken themselves to a snake. It's kind of like likening yourself to a cockroach or a rat or something like that. It just, in the West, it just automatically puts you on the back foot. You follow? So the Mamba thing it's like, you blew it, man. I'm bummed. Like Black Wolverine, that would have been cool, or, like anything, right? Black Mongoose, cool too. What was your one?
Honey badger.
Black muskrat, Black honey badger. Maybe that wouldn't have worked for me. But anyway. But he had this idea, this tenacity in this, that he himself exemplified, which allowed him to be an above average, maybe an excellent basketball player, become one of the best basketball players in the world, because he had this mentality. I think Michael Jordan had the mentality, and he had a superlative set of skills, so he became arguably the best basketball player ever, the GOAT. But Kobe Bryant was in that conversation, not because of his natural athleticism, but because of his doggedness and his willingness to do whatever is required. So, anukulyasya sankalpa. You accept whatever's favorable. You break up with the guy you shouldn't be with. You chant your rounds. Whether you want to or not, you chant your rounds. It's the right thing to do. It's who I am, it's what I do, it's my commitment. I follow the principles. When it's easy, I follow them. When it's difficult, I follow them. I do the right thing. I learn what the right thing is, and I do it. There may be limits to how much you know. You may genuinely be confused, but let's be honest, it's 10 to 15% of the time. The other 85 to 90% of the time, you know what you should do, you just don't want to, and you spend a lot of effort trying to talk yourself out of doing the right thing. Whereas if you just decided, I'm going to do the right thing, if you just had that mentality, I'm going to do the right thing, life gets so much more clear. I'm going to do the right thing. I don't care if it's easy. Whether it's easy or enjoyable doesn't make a difference to me. This is a problem people have. People think that if you get married, you're going to be happy. If you get married, you're going to be married. Happiness is a separate project. Marriage is a solid place to regulate your sex life, and it provides a really good opportunity for personal growth and a really good opportunity for raising children. Single-parent homes are a disaster. If you are the product of a single-parent home, your rates of incarceration quadruple. Your likelihood of dropping out of high school quadruples. Your likelihood of getting into drugs multiplies several times over. Committing violent crimes, unwanted pregnancies, just everything, every possible thing you want your kids to avoid skyrockets if you divorce. You get married so you can have a family and provide them with a stable environment. It's not for you, it's for them. But people don't think that way. They think, I'm not happy in this marriage. Well, who said that was what marriage is supposed to be? If you adopted the mindset that marriage is for growth, and marriage is for having children, then what a successful marriage looks like, it's getting married, sticking with that person, not cheating on them, being faithful, staying open, having open dialogue, having open communication, having children, providing a safe environment for those children, making that the goal of your life. Then, it's a totally different understanding of what marriage consists of. And then what constitutes a successful marriage is much different. Krishna consciousness is fun. Sure. A lot of the time. Some of the time it's hard. We should get beyond worrying about whether it's happy or sad and get to a place where we're doing the right thing for the right reason, irrespective of the externals. And that opens the door to some profound joy. That opens the door to a place you can go to that can't be taken away from you. That opens the door to some joy which goes beyond what the material world has on offer. As a byproduct of adopting that mindset. It's a weird thing. It's almost like a little Buddhist koan. When you stop looking, you'll find it. How you find your keys, right? And so when you stop looking for happiness from Krishna consciousness, and you just look for Krishna, then happiness becomes a byproduct. If you just look to please Krishna, then your own happiness becomes a byproduct. Just like when you water the root of a tree, the leaves flourish. When you please Krishna, you become happy, profoundly happy. Happy in a way which trumps exponentially what you had before. Anyway, anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. You give up what is unfavorable. This is a classic way of defining something. Truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You define something positive and negatively. You say what you do and you say what you don't do. He's wearing glasses and he's not wearing a vest. You follow? I'm trying to differentiate Krishnadas from Braj Kumud. So he's wearing glasses. Well, Braj Kumud's wearing glasses. He's not wearing a vest. You follow? And I got it. He is wearing shorts. You get it? Right? He is wearing a beanie. You get it? He's wearing shorts and a t-shirt. Right? He's not a woman because she's wearing glasses too. And you start to distinguish by saying positively and negatively. Both things are important. They're called Swarup Lakshana and Tatastha Lakshana. You say what something is and you say what something is not, and through this via positiva and via negativa definition, you then get to a really succinct definition of what something is, a really exact definition of what it is. So what is bhakti? It's when you accept whatever is favorable for your relationship with Krishna and you reject whatever is unfavorable. That's how you take shelter of Krishna. That's the path of taking shelter. Sadvida Sharanagati. That's the sixfold path of surrender. The first two are behavioral. You accept what's favorable, you reject what's unfavorable. Positive and negative behavioral definitions. What comes after behavioral? Cognitive. Rakshishati Bishwas. Rakshishyati Bishwas. Rakshishyati Bishwas. E.T. means quotation marks. So it means Rakshishyati. Rakshishyati means he will protect. He will protect. Raksh. Mare Krishna Rake Krishna Marike. If Krishna wants to kill you, then who can protect you? If Krishna wants to protect you, who can kill you? Rakshasha, those who you need to be protected from. Rakshishiti, Rakshishyati. Rakshishyati. He will protect. Rakshishyati. He will protect. Bishwas. Faith, he will protect me. Goptritve Vadanam. You accept Krishna in the sense that he is your maintainer. Goptri means maintainer, provider, father, leader. Goptritva, Goptritve. Goptritve means in terms of protecting this maintenance, this sense that you will be maintained. Varanam, you accept that. These are both cognitive. Again, positive and negative. Krishna will preserve what you have and carry you what you lack. Krishna will protect you from bad things, and he'll take care of you with good things. It's your mind. More so. The first one is behavioral. The second one is cognitive. You could also interpret the first two as being cognitive as well. I will accept those favorable mentalities as a more advanced understanding. But these second two are very much, they're ways devotees think about the world. If you're always afraid, you're not a bhakta. Devotees are fearless because they actually believe in Krishna, an all-good, all-powerful being. Therefore, they know they're safe. Krishna would never let anything happen to you that you didn't deserve, that didn't need to happen to you for your growth. And so I have faith Krishna's going to take care of me. And I have faith he'll protect me. I'm not afraid of you because I've got Krishna. If you hurt me, it's not you. Krishna's ordained it because I needed that to happen to me. I'm not afraid of you. You're not like an independent Lord I have to be afraid of because I've got Krishna. Krishna's omnipotent, omnibenevolent. He's always protected me. You can't hurt me. And Krishna's going to provide for me. I'm going to spend most of my life focusing on serving Krishna because I know Krishna's going to take care of me. Think Sermon on the Mount. When Jesus is chastising people and saying, you think God's not going to take care of you? Take care of the birds and the beasts. How come he's not going to take care of you? Amazingly, these deeply cultural definitions encoded in the Sanskrit language over 1,000 years ago that traveled the length and breadth of India and were adopted by our teachers 5 centuries ago to form the cornerstone of our philosophical school, our understanding of bhakti. These teachings are universal. And so you'll find them around the world. But it's best to understand them within a given tradition and then look at how they're universal. Otherwise, if you merely focus on universals, you oftentimes miss a lot of nuance, which is there in the language. Goptritve, in terms of the sense that Krishna will be your maintainer. Varanam. Tva means ness. So, maintainer-ness. Goptritva. Goptritva. Maintainer-ness. Goptritve, in terms of maintainer-ness, is literally what the term means. You follow? But it's communicated very simply by Goptritve Vadanam. You accept Krishna in terms of Goptritva. But what is Goptritva? Maintainerness. It doesn't even work in English. So you accept the sense, that's the word, the sense that Krishna is always going to maintain. You've accepted that mood. It's nuanced, isn't it? And you got to distinguish that from, well, he's going to protect me, he's going to maintain me. Those are really two different elements. Positive and negative again. Negative and positive, rather. Atma nikshepa karpanye. Atma nikshepa karpanya. Atma nikshepa. You throw yourself, that ship means to throw. Ni means down. Nikshepa means literally to throw yourself down in front of Krishna. Atma, to throw oneself down in front of Krishna. Like an offering. You know? Like if you sacrifice an animal, you put the animal down in front of the deity and slit its throat. And so, you offer yourself as a sacrifice to Krishna. You give your whole life to Krishna. You just present yourself to him. You throw yourself at Krishna's feet. Karpanya. Karpanya comes from creep. It's where you get the word kripana from, miser. But karpanya means this feeling that I'm incomplete, that I need Krishna. This feeling of humility, which actually is just the result of correctly understanding your position in this cosmos. If you correctly meditate on your infinitesimally small position in this cosmos and the vastness of reality and the greatness of God, you will naturally feel yourself very, very small, very fortunate, and very filled with awe. It's not a low self-esteem. It's a correct assessment of the minusculeness of your existence in relationship to the grandness of creation and specifically the greatness of the Creator. Karpanya. Dainya is another term which is sometimes used in our literature. We get the same thing. A feeling of dina, which means being fallen. A feeling that I need you, Krishna. I'm incomplete without you. I'm throwing myself down at your feet. I'll accept whatever's favorable. I'll reject whatever's favorable. I accept you as my protector, and I accept that you're my maintainer. Accept whatever's favorable. I reject whatever's not favorable. I know you'll protect me. I have that faith. And I've accepted that you are my maintainer. I'm not illusion thinking you're maintaining me. I know Krishna's maintaining me. However it comes, I know Krishna's. I'm having a dialogue with Krishna in this lifetime. You would be assisting me in that dialogue by punishing me on Krishna's behalf or giving me things on Krishna's behalf or protecting me on Krishna's behalf. But I understand that really what's going on in this world is I'm having a dialogue with Krishna. My best friend who wishes me only the best, who's always looking out for me, who has never failed me. And that's my purpose in life. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get there. I'm going to give up what's unfavorable, accept what's favorable, know that Krishna is my maintainer. No matter how I'm maintaining myself, I know the ultimate's coming from Krishna, and he's my protector. And I'm going to offer myself to Krishna. This life is yours, Krishna. And that's both cognitive and behavioral, right? Offering your life to Krishna is both cognitive and behavioral. And I have this feeling of humility. That's not low self-esteem, it's just a correct perception of what's actually going on. Savita Shanagati. That's the sixfold path of surrender. This is something you need to memorize. What's one? Go. Quick.
So reject things that are unfavorable.
Reject unfavorable. You.
Accepting things that are favorable.
Boom. 2, 3. 3.
Accept as protector.
Boom. Christians, you're going to protect me. 4. Go. Stop pointing at yourself and go.
What did you just say?
I don't know. You lost. Go. Christians, you're maintained. That's 4. 5. Huh? Boom. 5. 6. I need you. Karpanya. That's right. A feeling of incompleteness without Krishna. A natural humility. Excellent. That's 6. Let's do it again. What's 1?
Accept the
Come on, man.
everything that's favorable.
Boom. 1. This is memorization time. This isn't like fluff time. This is memorization time. 2. Not you. You. That's 2. 3. You. Boom. 3. 4. He's going to protect you from all harm. 5. Offer yourself to Krishna. 6. Yeah, 6. Come on, 6. Huh? I need you, Krishna. Humility. 6. Don't forget that one. You should be able to answer at any point, any of these. You should know them all. Give me all 6, Matt. Go.
Doing what's right.
Okay? Lost. Go. Raj Kamud. Give them to me.
Accepting what is favorable.
Yes.
Rejecting what is unfavorable.
Yes.
Krishna is my protector.
Yes.
My maintainer.
Yes.
I want to offer my life to Krishna.
Yes.
I need you, Krishna.
Boom. 6. That's what we're looking for today. Because if you learn this, you have now understood Bhakti as defined by our theologians in our tradition and in the larger Vaishnava tradition for well over 1,000 years. And this stuff's pulling from the Vedic literatures. So it's not merely 1,000 years old. It's thousands of years old, but it was poetically codified 1,000 years old. And what we're really doing is you've now understood thousands of years of the Vedic revelation. And now this is Cosa Nostra. It's our thing. It's Nuestra Familia. It's our family. You're now one of us. You've crossed that. You understand mahalo and aloha. You understand? Or like in Costa Rica, they talk about pura vida. Pure life. It's like their culture. Pura vida. It's like, it indicates like fun in the sun and surf and clean living and good food and relaxed lifestyle. It's their je ne sais quoi, that thing you can't say, but you can say it in our tradition. Because they took the trouble to define it rigorously. So it could be passed on and memorized and meditated upon and deeply understood by generation after generation after generation. Accept whatever is unfavorable, reject whatever is not. Accept that Krishna is going to protect you and he's your maintainer. Have humility and offer your life to Krishna. 6 things. That's the path. It's simple. You can say it simply. You can get into it in detail. What I just told you in this class, in whatever the half an hour when I went through this, it's like centuries of teachings I condensed for you guys. Millennia. I gave you all the nuances. Cognitive, behavioral, positive, negative. The subtle distinctions between the different points. If you can hold all those, you're a master of the subject. But the least thing we want to do is we want to memorize. You can't get all 6, get 3. And the next time we do it, get 4 or 5. Next time we do it, get 6. And then Bhakti becomes yours. You're an insider now. You're no longer an outsider. Once you've mastered this, you're an insider. And this will color your life. You can meditate on this every day of your life. Is this favorable? Is it unfavorable? Am I aware that Krishna is maintaining me, or have I lost the plot, think somebody else is maintaining me, I'm maintaining myself? What's the purpose of my life? Is it to offer my life to Krishna? Is that the purpose of my life? Or did I detoured and I just adopted some other purpose in my life? Do I really believe Krishna is going to protect me, or am I running in fear? If I am afraid, I have to give up that fear. I have to honor the fact that I believe Krishna is going to protect me by giving up my fear. I have to prove I'm a Vaishnava by giving up those behaviors that I'm engaged in, which are not favorable for my spiritual life. Because I have to prove to Krishna and my community that I'm taking this thing seriously. I gotta take it to the next level. Okay. Thank you all very much. Let's do a little care time.